programs have not made any relevant scientific discoveries, but they do make for a really tasty goddamn cheeseburger. I think you make a very good point that we tend to consider the emotional and physical welfare of animals most when they display human characteristics. There's also the emotional cuteness of an animal that plays an important factor, which is why it's okay to cut up frogs in biology class, but not to do anything to little fluffy bunnies. I even know vegetarians who are quite happy to eat fish. I take your point further in that these emotions we see, the ones that elicit empathy from us, may not even really be there. We have a tendency to anthropomorphise because that's really the only frame of emotional and conscious reference that we have. The danger is that we start to see behaviour as indicating human emotions and mind states, like guilt or spite in a dog's behaviour, where there's no supporting evidence that that mind state really exists. If you watch these TV programmes about behavioural problems in pet dogs, the root cause is rarely down to the animal, but generally it's down to the owners. They treat the dog as if it's a little child in a furry coat, and they expect it to behave like one. Well, it won't. It's a dog. I think dogs do have minds. They certainly appear to have them, but they're dog minds, they're not human ones. One recurrent theme of problem animals is that the owners don't want to hurt the dog's feelings, and so the animal's pretty much allowed to do as it pleases. The problem with this is that canine society is rigidly hierarchical, and that's the way that the dog's brains are wired. They need clearly defined structure in their social group. If you tell a dog to do something and it doesn't, and you let that slide, then your authority is in question, and the dog has to re-evaluate its position in the overall hierarchy. So it will push a little bit further to see where it fits, until it gets told off and punished for doing something else. And this is very stressful for the animal because one of its basic emotional needs isn't being met. If it knows where it sits in the pecking order, it feels secure, it knows what behaviour is expected from it. Mixed signals just create stress and more erratic behaviour as the animal tries to discover some sense of order in its world. Our culture is ingrained with this bogus idea that animals think and feel the same way that we do. They do not. Everything from Lassie through Skippy the kangaroo to Disney's Nemo and those Antarctic penguins paint an idea of animal psychology and lifestyle that's pure fiction, and that can be a problem. Now, I'm not advocating that we are unnecessarily cruel to animals. I do believe that we should do everything we can to minimise suffering, but it's important to realise that whilst human beings are animals, animals are not human beings. The problem with this degree of anthropomorphism is that it leads to people using emotive, human-focused words like murder and slavery when referring to people who kill or use animals for other means. This line of thinking then leads on to the idea that perhaps the animals need to be saved in some way, that there's some higher, noble cause in preventing animals from being harmed by human beings. And taken far enough, this can and does lead to people having their houses firebombed, their cars booby-trapped, welfare of their families threatened, because there's a loss of perspective when considering the life of animals against the life of a human being. A cow is not a person, it's not a citizen. It's basically a machine that we use to turn cellulose into cheeseburgers and shoes. Perhaps in the future, we may have the technology to do that without having to use an animal as an intermediate step. But in that event, it won't lead to animals not being reared and slaughtered for food. It'll lead to them not existing at all.